Feel free to return to our channel at any time. Seated in the gloom, a little lad called Peter Greenbaum holds a battered guitar as if it were his only means of support. Peter has started to escape into music even if the outside world is gloomy, noisy, and cruel. The American blues, not the popular songs, but the lonely, hurting cries of the people. As his peers played catch with footballs and comic books, Peter dove headfirst into the dusty grooves of Robert Johnson's eerie records, meticulously tracing every tormented note of BB obsession, not curiosity, was the word. The blues wasn't his inspiration. He was inhaling its fumes. No one in his family could comprehend. He was so unnoticed by his instructors. However, Peter was already plotting a clandestine course that would lead him from this seedy East London neighborhood to rock stardom and then plunge him into insanity. He was content not to be famous. Shields and glory weren't his goals. He merely wanted the ability to communicate via 6 strings. His unique talent, nevertheless, would turn out to be the plague that destroyed his life. Something was brewing in London's seedy nightclubs by 1966. Clapton had departed. There has to be a new hero for the scenario. A baby-faced, soft-spoken Peter Green then strode into the room. As he held a Les Paul that, upon touching it, appeared to cry. The unimaginable was extended to him. The chance to replace Eric Clapton and John Miles in the legendary British blues band Bluesbreakers. It was as if you were asking me to take God's place. And initially, the public was outraged. Their applause was deafening. They jeered. "I can't find Clapton." With a sneer, they spoke. But Peter showed no fear. He turned it on and started playing. The atmosphere dimmed. His supernatural solo was more than music. It was a ritual. Listeners were shivering. No one could put their finger on it, but his twisted notes had an emotional effect. Every word carried some sort of emotional significance. Something weathered and old. An ethereal thing. As legendary musician B.B. King would later admit, he was the only one who made Peter break out in cold sweats when he was a kid. Peter Green was suddenly more than simply Clapton's heir. There was more to him, something unique. This is far more apparent than it first appears. It is also slightly strange and somewhat predictable. Trouble, however, was simmering beneath the surface. Photos of him never showed a smile. His interviews were always modest. He felt uneasy about his fame. "It is unfair to be lauded more than the music," he once remarked. A tempest was brewing in his shadow due to the excessive brightness of the light. The world thought Peter was going solo when he quit the Bluesbreakers in 1967. On the contrary, he formed a band and subsequently withdrew. He did not inspire the moniker Fleetwood Mac. The rhythm section provided the inspiration for its name, featuring Mick Fleetwood and John McVie. Seriously, who does that? When you construct a ship, who needs to be in charge of steering it? The band's initial surge to fame was meteoric. Every note was cherished by British blues enthusiasts. Albatross, "Oh Well," Black Magic Woman, and then there was sadness, spirit, and something more in every one of them. It was awful. Peter's playing had evolved. Despite its continued brilliance, it took on the tone of an individual fleeing from their own identity. The lyrics, which were formerly lyrical, become unsettling. Singing "Man of the World," he expressed his wish that he had never been born. There was no metaphorical undertone to it. The music was almost like an ecstasy. Stranger things began to happen behind closed doors. Peter, resembling a nomadic monk, arrived for rehearsals dressed in lengthy robes. He parted with his cash. Giving up his celebrity and donating it all to charity was something he discussed. He said that he was being led by voices. He would either sit quietly, speak in a jumble, or simply not show up when called upon to do so during meetings. His bandmates were at a loss for action. They had moved on from dealing with a famous musician. Something delicate and misplaced was in their hands. Before their very eyes, the man who had united them was falling apart. Next up was Munster. The year 1970. A fateful evening that would tear Peter Green's life to shreds. The German leg of Fleetwood Mac's tour had just concluded. There was a lot of merriment, but Peter remained behind. An invitation had been extended to him to join a commune on the outskirts of town, where mystics, free thinkers, and self-styled prophets lived. They gave him a huge dose of LSD, not a little. Some claim he did it voluntarily. Some claim that he felt pressured. However, the events that followed are inarguable. Pete vanished. A span of 4 days. It was clear that he had changed his identity when he got back. His voice was low and quivering, and his eyes were icy. He murmured something about specters, cosmic whispers, and the battle between angels and demons within his own head. According to him, he witnessed the planet collapsing. On stage, he remained still. He walked alone off stage. His hunger was sated. His laughter ceased. He lost the ability to form relationships with anyone or anything. Peter, the talented, troubled, gorgeous soul that the band loved, slipped away as much as they fought to keep him. A shattered man, confined to a reality that only he could perceive, was the sole survivor. He announced his resignation. He preferred not to be adored. He wished no one would see him. He ended his relationship with Fleetwood Mac. By way of music, by way of truth. One of the most brilliant composers of the 20th century sank into obscurity in an instant. Discharged not from an overdose. Not at the end of life, but at the beginning of it. Even after Peter departed from Fleetwood Mac, he made an effort to keep performing. Still, a crack had appeared, not only professionally, but also psychologically. Every time he reached for the instrument, he promptly set it down again. His notes, which used to flow effortlessly, suddenly sounded unnatural, disoriented, and disorganized. The strings seemed to be taunting or perhaps resisting him. He started talking about ghosts and other unseen entities that followed him about. His visitors reported that he hardly spoke at all. Rumor has it that he would spend hours on end wandering the streets by himself, humming to himself, and scribbling lyrics on scraps of paper that he would then let fly into the wind. He went so far as to shave his head and start dressing loosely because he was sure that his appearance was drawing the notice of demons. Real voices were heard by Peter. On top of being unkind, his detractors accused him of being wicked and that he ought to vanish since he was unworthy of his abilities. The man who had B.B. King in his grip no longer trusted his own thoughts. After leaving the music industry in the late 1970s, Peter Green essentially disappeared from society. He spent a lot of time in institutions after being diagnosed with schizophrenia. The treatments were really harsh in those icy, germ-filled institutions. Treatment with electrical current, or ECS. Deleted parts of his past. He felt numb from the medication. Chemicals and dread suffocated his brilliance. Word on the street was that he had lost his housing. On park seats, he was spotted by fans, untidy and droning on. A journalist asserted that they discovered him residing in a squat in London, without of running water, electricity, and except for one undamaged guitar in one corner. He had lost his manhood. A specter he was. Even with their best efforts, Peter's loved ones were unable to calm the tempest that raged inside his mind. Disagreements arose on who should have power, how much royalties should be paid, if he could be assisted at all, and how to help him. Michael, Peter's brother and another musician, allegedly had disagreements with him over guardianship and creative decisions. They didn't exchange words for a long time. Even though they were originally very proud of their kid, his parents now shun interviews. No one in his family would speak with reporters after him. Silence was the result of grief rather than embarrassment for the Greenbaum family. Even though he was only a few blocks away, Peter had completely disappeared from their lives. Fleetwood Mac reversed their approach as Peter fell apart. They skyrocketed to global superstar status once Lindsey Buckingham, Stevie Nicks, and Christine McVie joined the group. Grammys begin, albums go platinum, and tours sell out even without being physically present. Peter was able to observe his former band's meteoric rise to fame through television or newspaper headlines. He mentioned that they're doing excellent in one of his infrequent interviews. I wish them the best. But his friends and family insisted differently. The pain was intensified as I saw them detonate. He had seen his legacy rewritten. The blues pioneer had become an obscure afterthought. But record companies made a killing off of his reputation. Album compilations were launched. Booksellers began stocking remastered versions of his earlier works. Despite the success of his singing and guitar playing, Peter made almost nothing. He was cheated out of his hard-earned wealth due to legal loopholes, lost publishing rights, and contracts that were decades old. In retrospect, one of Peter's previous supervisors acknowledged that he was defenseless and that no one had come to his aid. The noise had been made by him. Some people become quite wealthy as a result of it. And then, in the late 90s, the unimaginable occurred. Peter Green's return was gradual and clandestine. He reformed with the Splinter Group and startled old fan with a handful of blues shows. He seemed and spoke differently, yet he was present. On stage, he was silent and rarely grinned. While playing, though, he let forth a few muted embers from the ancient fire. A little less piercing, but still quite hot. That wasn't a return to form. That was terrifying. A man's past self is there, playing side by side with him. Peter lived out his final years in relative obscurity. He kept to himself in Surrey, where he grew vegetables, watched TV, and played guitar on occasion. However, the authentic, soul-wrenching blues prophet known as Peter Green never truly came back. July 2020 was the month of his death. Quietly, but the enigma persisted long after death. How could a man with a talent like his vanish so entirely? Fans are still trying to figure it out. The music industry allowed him to fall, but how? Perhaps Peter Green's birth compelled him to feel too much, play too profoundly, and suffer too quietly for this world to be his true home. Ultimately, he accomplished precisely that.